Hello, welcome once again to Lehto's Law. I'm Steve Lehto. Was chatting with a new friend on Facebook this morning about small towns and small town cops. And it was kind of funny. He said something about the police in his small town, which is not actually far from where I am in southeastern Michigan. And I said, "Oh, don't get me going about small town cops." And he goes, "Why?" And I started telling him the story, and I realized I don't think I've ever told the story here. So I've got a story about small town cops. And I've mentioned before that I lived in Bad Axe, Michigan. By the way, thanks, Josh, for the conversation the other morning and also for bringing up the topic. I lived in Bad Axe, Michigan for a couple of years, and Bad Axe is the center of the thumb. And I worked at a radio station as a disc jockey back in the early 1980s. And because it was in the thumb of Michigan, at the top of the hour, there was a thing we played. It's like, from the thumb of Michigan, WLEW, Bad Axe. And it wasn't my voice on the liner. It was Jack Thomas. And I believe Jack Thomas passed away a few years ago. Great guy, huge voice. And but I went to Bad Axe to be a disc jockey, and I'd grown up in the Detroit area. So I moved there. It's about 100 miles north of Detroit. And for those of you familiar with Michigan, I was talking to the program director at the time, who I think has also passed away, Tom Meyer. And when he called me on the phone to say I had an interview, he said, can you make it up here tomorrow? I want to talk to you and meet you face to face. I said, great. He goes, the address is 935 South Van Dyke. I still remember that. And I said, oh, okay. And this is back early 1980s, and I was a young kid. So I actually said, do I need any directions? And he goes, yeah, do you know where Van Dyke is in Detroit? I said, yeah. And he goes, go there and turn left. Because that Van Dyke is the same Van Dyke that goes up into the thumb of Michigan, and it hits a curve right through Bad Axe, and then it goes, and then M53 goes up further, I believe, to the top of the thumb. But anyways, he goes, yeah, go to Van Dyke, turn left, and so I did that, and I went to the interview, got the job, and they go, yeah, can you start in 2 weeks? I said, sure, So I quickly packed up all my stuff into my 1969 Dodge Charger, which looks a lot like that model right there, but I've got photographs of it, which I'll put up here. And now that does play into the story, okay? And so I had worked at a gas station prior to this. I'd been making minimum wage, which I think is like $3 an hour, $3.35, something like that. And so I moved to Bad Axe, and I got an apartment on Irwin Street. And I'd be guessing on the address, I think it was 425 or 423 East Irwin, but I lived in an apartment in what they called the Old Hospital, and it was in fact the Old Hospital, and that's another story altogether. But so I was renting an apartment. I believe the apartment was $200 a month or $220 a month, something like that, and it was going to be a struggle to make that payment on what I was earning at the radio station, but the point is, I moved to a small town, and Bad Axe, as a small town, it's a decent sized small town. I don't know what the population was then, but it had not just a main street and an intersection and a light, one light, but it also had several streets deep in each direction from that intersection. But it actually had at the time a Kmart, and it had a big grocery store. I forgot what brand the grocery store was. And then downtown, it had a couple pharmacies and drugstores, a jewelry store. It had the Bad Axe Theater, an actual theater with a big old marquee out front. It had at least one car dealership downtown and a couple car dealerships spread about, but you could buy a Ford, GM, Chrysler, anything like that in town. There were a whole bunch of tractor dealers because that was the center of farming community. And in fact, at the top of the hour during the major newscasts, we read the grain reports. We actually read the commodity prices. Corn is this much, soybeans are this much, grain is this much, and so on. And small town, and there's the radio station, and I'm working there, and I moved to town, and I've got the bright yellow car with the black stripe on the back. Now, here's the thing. The car is loud visually, but not audio. Okay, so in other words, it has a functional exhaust on it, a muffler, and I kept it in good repair. But you couldn't miss that car. I mean, you saw that car coming a mile away, and it stood out. And I did that on purpose. I mean, when I got the car, it was dark green. My brother painted it. I've talked about that before on the show. But the point is that I move into this small town with this bright yellow car, and I'm working from 7 till midnight as a disc jockey at the radio station. And at that time, at midnight, the station signed off. Boom, went dark till the next morning. So I was the guy who at 11:59 actually said something and then hit a button on a cart machine, and Jack Thomas's voice came on over the beginning notes of the national anthem and actually said WLEW AM and FM now ends its broadcast day. Thank you for listening. And then the national anthem played. And when that national anthem ended, I actually walked back into the room where the transmitters were, and there's an AM transmitter and FM transmitter. I put one thumb over each button, and at the end of the note, when the fat lady sang, boom! I shut down the station, and you saw the machines go whoosh. As all the, tubes. This is tube amplifiers. Tubes this big. I used to have some. By the way, I'm going to make a request right now. If there's anybody in my audience who works at or worked at an old school radio station where they had the big glass tubes, I used to have 4 or 5 of them. They're really, really cool, and I lost them through a variety of moves that I did over the years. If you can get me in physical touch with one of those, I'm willing to pay for it. Send me a note, steve@lehtoslaw.com. I'd love to add a couple big old glass radio tubes behind me. Not radio receiver tubes. I'm talking about the transmitter tubes, the big ones. When I worked in Flint at WTRX, in the broadcast booth, you looked right through a window into the bank of tubes, and it was so cool when you're in there at night with the lights down low and these tubes on the other side of the glass glowing. It was kind of like that was like the heart of the radio station. I was the brains. Those are the heart. But I really digress. Bad Axe, Michigan. I moved there. It was early in 1982, I believe. I got the bright yellow car. One of the first nights I'm on the air, national anthem ends, boom, shut the transmitters off. I walk through the building, shutting everything off except for the news wire, which was just spitting out news all night long. I lock the door behind me. I get in my car. I fire it up. It's a 383 4-barrel. And because it's been sitting all evening, it's cold. The engine's cold. So I put it in reverse, back it out, put it in drive, pull out onto M53, and I'm just driving slowly through town. Drive slowly through town. One light, I believe it's blinking at this hour. I could be wrong on that. And then I make a left onto the streets, can take me down to Irwin, and all of a sudden I get lit up by the cops. Somewhere out of nowhere, I didn't see the guy. Bad Axe police officer turns on the lights. So I stop, roll my window down. Car had power windows. Believe it or not, it was a special edition. And police officer walks up and goes, driver's license, registration, please. So pull out the driver's license, the registration. I hand it to him. And without even looking at him, he goes, what are you doing out so late? And I go, oh, I just got off work. Now, you have to understand, at midnight in Bad Axe in the wintertime, nothing was open. Nothing. Zero. Nothing was open. Even the gas station in town was closed. I'm pretty sure. Gas station at the other end of town may have been open, but pretty sure. He goes, oh, where do you work? I go, the radio station. He goes, oh, here you go. Hands it back to me. And I go, why'd you pull me over? And he goes, he just walked away. Is that, I'm happy to not get a ticket, because I had had a few by that point in my life. It's hard not to when you're driving that car the way I drove it. So I roll the window up, go down to my apartment, turn on the TV and watch David Letterman, I'm pretty sure. So one thing you have to understand about Bad Axe is that Bad Axe is the county seat of Huron County. The top of the thumb is Huron County. It's a typical county, has a county seat. Many county seats in Michigan not only house their own police departments, but they house the county sheriff, the Huron County sheriffs, and they also house the Michigan State Police. So as you drive through Bad Axe, you will see the Huron County Sheriff's Department, the Michigan State Police Post, and of course the Bad Axe Police Department, each of whom employ a bunch of cops who all have their own cars who drive around. Over the next several weeks, I got pulled over by every single one of them. Every single one of them pulled me over at least once. And a couple of days later, I'm driving along. Boom, lights come on. Roll the window down. Driver's license registration. I'm just curious, why'd you pull me over? What are you doing out so late? Coming home from work. Oh, where do you work? Radio station. I asked one guy, go, oh, you're the new guy. And I go, yeah. And he goes, why didn't you just tell me that? And he threw my stuff back at me and walked away. Like I was wrong to have not immediately said, I'm the new guy. I got pulled over. It was either 9 or 10 times. So I understand that it's possible that there might be more than 9 or 10 cops on duty at those 3 posts during that time frame. But the point I'm trying to make is I got pulled over 9 or 10 times. Every single time, when asked, why'd you pull me over? Police officer would say, well, why out so late? What are you doing out so late? And here's my problem with small town cops. Number one, they could have told each other. By the way, did you see the guy with that cool 69 Dodge Charger? Yeah, he works at the radio station. Or, now, here's the thing. I was told earlier in life, as a child, I suspect I was lied to, but I was told that police officers are hired for their investigative skills on some level. They are good at observing things. The radio station, WLEW, at 935 South Van Dyke, it's on the side of Van Dyke, which is one of the 2 major roads that cross in downtown Bad Axe. If you worked for the county or the state police, you'd have driven by it pretty much every single shift. If you drove by between the hours of 5 o'clock when I got to work or midnight, you'd see my car parked prominently up against the side of the building in the most prominent spot because I used to park it where I could look out the window and see it. And it was most visible from the road. So any police officer who worked in that area who had even an inkling of an ability to be observant would have noticed, oh, that's the car I see at the radio station every single night but Wednesdays, because that's the night I head off. So Thursday through Tuesday, my car is there from 5 until midnight. And it's such a bright, obvious, obnoxious, loud color, you couldn't miss it. So when you pull me over a half a mile from that spot and go, what are you doing out here? I should have said, you've never noticed my car at the radio station? And they'd probably say, oh, that's right. Yeah, I have noticed that. But no. So part of it was they were simply pulling me over. That was their way of welcoming me to town. Okay? Never mind the fact that there was a sign at the edge of town that says, welcome to Bad Axe. I thought that was the job of that sign. But apparently the police officers of the county sheriff, the state police, and the Bad Axe Police Department all considered that to be part of their job, to welcome you to town by pulling you over, asking for your driver's license and registration, and then saying, oh, you should have told me you're the new guy. So, like I said, pulled over 9 or 10 times. Now, you might say, Steve, long time ago, I'm surprised you even remember this. It ties in. Because one of my jobs at the radio station between 7 and midnight, I was a disc jockey, but I also read the news at the top of the hour. We did a live newscast. We did not put on news from a network. And I also was charged with once a night, I had to call all of our various news sources, and that included the local police, the county sheriff, and the state police. And I'd ask them, is there any news? Anything happen? And they knew who we were. In fact, we actually had, I believe we had a hotline, a phone that we could call them, and a phone they could call us on in case something was happening and they needed us to help them with something. So one night, and by the way, I also had a newsman named Craig Routson, who I believe is still there, and if he is still there, I hope someone tells him that I'm talking about him right now. Craig really ought to check in. I should probably shoot him a note, but I'm not sure how to find him, other than going to Bad Axe, driving through and stopping in. But Craig was the news guy doing the news during my shift, if he was there. He'd often go out and do news events, cover things like city council meetings and so on. But if he was in the building, he'd say, hey, Steve, I'll do the news for you. So he would do the news at the top of the hour. So one night, we were on the air. I was on the air as a disc jockey. Craig was in the building writing news stories or something. And something happened. And what I mean by something happened is, I mean the police scanner in the newsroom went nuts. There was a motorcyclist on a motorcycle someplace south of town, heading north on Van Dyke Avenue at a high rate of speed, and he blew past, I believe, a county sheriff, but it may have been a state cop, who had set up a spot to watch for speeders. And as he blew past them, the police officer pulled up behind him, and the guy didn't slow down. In fact, he accelerated. Now, here's the thing. Motorcyclists can often outrun police cars, but they can't outrun radios. And so the police got on the old hoot and holler and called ahead because this guy's heading towards Bad Axe. And they said, hey, high-speed motorcyclist, guy did not pull over. He won't pull over for me. I got the flashers on, but he's losing me because he's sailing. Can you guys watch out for him? And they actually got a roadblock set up. And I'm not exactly sure if I even knew where it was, but someplace downtown Bad Axe, they actually set up a roadblock. This is late in the evening. It has to be, I'm guessing, 8, 9, 10 o'clock, like towards that time of the day. Forgot what day of the week it was. But it was all chatter on the scanner was such that Craig came and got me and said, Steve, there's something happening right here. There's something happening going on down here on the scanner. And we heard the chatter going back and forth, and then finally somebody over the radio said, got him. And then the chatter stopped. The chatter stopped. And I'm like, oh my, this is a huge story. Something's happening. Like, what's going on? And Craig goes, don't worry, I'll get to the bottom of this. He goes, I know the cops, obviously, talk to them every single night. Craig called the police. Police go, we got a problem. The man on the motorcycle was an off-duty cop from one of the 3 agencies that were chasing him. And apparently he thought he could get away with it at first, simply by just outrunning the guys who were chasing him. And then he decided that he would just kind of like hope he could get out of it when they set up the roadblock by revealing himself to be a police officer. And that's what happened. And here's what happened. So the police said, could you guys not cover the story on the air? Don't do it. Don't do the story. And Craig said, okay, I'll have to talk to the news director about that. And we got a phone call a little while later, and I believe it was the owner of the station who called us and said, guys, you can't do the story. And now it's not up to me. I'm a disc jockey. I'm a newsman. And I believe Craig said, kind of have to do the story. I mean, there was a commotion. And there are people in town, other people have got police scanners. I mean, everyone knows something happened. And so what they did is they wrote up a story that was so innocuous as a joke. Basically, it was something to the effect of, there was a high-speed police chase earlier this evening in which no one was hurt. Boom. And they moved on to the next story. Meanwhile, grain prices are this, corn prices are that. I'm like, what? And the local newspaper did the same thing. They ran a story where basically, if you heard about the chase last night, it was nothing happened, no charges filed, nobody's injured. But there was somebody driving recklessly, because they were speeding so fast they were going reckless. And they led police on a high-speed chase because they failed to pull over, so they're fleeing and eluding. And not only did they not charge anybody, but they didn't want anyone talking about this. So it didn't get talked about. And at the time, my only avenue for talking about stuff was on the radio, and I was told I couldn't talk about it. So I didn't talk about it. But here I am talking about it now to 80,000 of my subscribers. So there you have it. But again, small town cops, yeah, they are what they are. Questions or comments or small town cop stories, put them below. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.